Well. Welcome everyone to our very first Escaping Your Comfort Zone storytelling hour. I'd like to say, so once upon a time, it's not quite like that. So most of you will probably know me. I'm Rochelle. I'm the founder of Escaping Your Comfort Zone. Just before we go any further tonight, I just wanted to begin by acknowledging the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nations. They're the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered today. We pay our respects to the local people for allowing us to have our gathering on their land and to their elders past, present and future. And that applies to where we're recording today. So a little bit about the storytelling hour. So why did we decide to start doing the storytelling hour? Well, as many of you are people who are in Melbourne and Victoria and in other parts of Australia and maybe the world, but specifically Melbourne, we have been in lockdown for a long time now. It's been many, many months since we've been able to get together and go for a proper hike, or even get together and see each other over coffee. We're limited by the ways that we can catch up, but we wanted to work out a way in which we could keep everyone engaged and keep everyone, I guess, entertained and give everyone something to do as well. So over this period, for the next few weeks, we've got storytelling hours happening twice a week, which is really exciting. So we'll be on the live stream in the Melbourne group, which was most likely where you're watching it now. And for those who can't attend and watch, a public copy will be saved to YouTube in the coming days. Just so you know, that remember, we're in our Escaping Your Comfort Zone private Melbourne Facebook group. So any comments that you make in the comments section is just restricted to our group. So you are safe in knowing that it's not out to the public. But as usual, please be respectful and please be encouraging of each other. And yeah, that's basically it. So I wanted to take this opportunity. Well, before we go any further, I'm just going to check the comments to make sure. Can everyone hear me okay? Can everyone see me? I'm here. Workout gear, Escaping Your Comfort Zone top on. Only because I'm really hot because I cranked up the heater too hard. Looks like we've got a few of you online now. So I'm not going to talk any further because you're not here to hear my voice. I would like to welcome Loey Matthews. So Loey, there she is. Hi Loey,
Hey.
how are you?
Say they are, not she is.
Yes, there you go. Beautiful segue into, I have no doubt, a topic that you'll be talking about at a future time. And apologies, Loey, thank you for pulling me up on that. And I have a lot to get used to and learn. So Loey has very, very generously offered her time tonight. Their time tonight. This is going to take a while. Loey has offered their time tonight to talk about coming out as weird. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to hand it over to you, Loey, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Cool. Well, hang on. Rochelle, you won't let me share my screen. You've set the meeting up so I can't. Here we go. Oh, good. You fixed it. Yes, you fixed it.
Okay, I'm going to start recording now because that's one thing I forgot to do. So give me one tick. All right, we're now recording and I would like to hand you over to Loey Matthews. Over to you, Loey.
Hi. Alrighty. Well, Hi everyone, I'm really happy to be here. I'm Loey M. I'm a non-binary escapee and I live in Geelong. I love to lead hikes with escaping your comfort zone. I live with my spouse Calvin. We love doing hiking and geeky things like playing board games and video games. But today I'm going to talk about neurodiversity, what it's like to get an autism and ADHD diagnosis as an adult, and a bit about the experience of autistic people assigned female at birth who may not get the same levels of diagnosis and support as people who are assigned male at birth. And bear with me 2 shakes because I want to make it so I can see things. All right, beautiful. So there we go. Sorry, need to see things. It's helpful. So just a warning, this talk does go into discussions about mental health difficulties, including depression and suicide. If you're not up for that, by all means, log out. Won't hold it against you in the slightest. And as Rochelle said, the discussion is recorded. So if you want to watch it later when it goes on YouTube, please feel free. Okay, so growing up, I grew up in Geelong, the youngest of 6 kids. My dad taught electronics at the Gordon TAFE and my mum had given up teaching to raise us. We were poor, but we all achieved well academically. My parents scrimped and saved so we could go to a private school. I loved to read, voraciously devoured the written word on pretty much every single surface I could find. I'd browse the World Book Encyclopedia that was on the bottom bookshelf at home. At school, I was known for being the kid with their hand in the air, waving enthusiastically to answer the question. And yes, I was often in trouble for chatting to other students, daydreaming, procrastinating, and forgetting to do my homework. I remember being spanked with a ruler by a teacher in grade 2 for plain not hearing what the teacher said. I was clumsy and slow, and I found it hard to learn physical skills and was terrible at PE. I also struggled socially. Prone to social awkwardness, I was often bullied and teased by siblings and classmates, which would often result in white-hot and violent rages, which then led to further social isolation. I spent many lonely lunchtimes by myself, excluded and despised by those around me. So this was said to me by a younger student. At the time, I would have probably been about 14. And I had no insight into what it meant at the time. It was meant to wound me, and it sure as hell did. But now I see that it was actually correct. What we refer to as street smarts is actually about social cues that I just didn't understand at the time. As I grew older in school, I was very ambitious. I knew I had the book smarts, but those around me told me that I needed to apply myself. I was determined to be the Prime Minister, and I decided that I had the brains to do it. However, whenever I took on a big or challenging project or assignment, I'd seem to do poorly at it. Again and again, I believed that this time I would be able to achieve everything that I was capable of, that the reasons I hadn't achieved were due to my own laziness. I came to believe that the reason I didn't fit in socially was I was just more clever than everyone else. And when I reached university, I'd magically find my niche and go on to success. Well, I aimed to get into a law degree. My marks weren't high enough. My top 15% marks were only good enough to get into a teaching degree. Well, socially, I did love university, particularly living on campus, and the opportunity to find people who didn't bully me. I didn't have the same structure I had at school. I became depressed at failing to achieve academically. I made a suicide attempt and I dropped out after 2 years. I moved back in with my parents in Geelong, feeling like an absolute failure. It took me 18 months to find a job in a call centre. I worked in various call centres over the next decade. And while I was still upset about not achieving my potential, I didn't want to be out of work again. My potential to progress in my career was identified by those around me, but I didn't have the social nous to navigate managing others and to impress higher management. And in call centres, generally becoming a team leader is the starting point to any kind of promotion. I also ran into issues with learning unfamiliar corporate cultures and was fired from 2 jobs in quick succession, which was a massive hit to my self-worth. At this time, I learned the skills that I now know to be masking. That is, hiding or camouflaging my quirky or atypical traits in order to fit in. It can be absolutely exhausting, and that accumulates in poor mental and physical health. However, working in call centres also gave me a social circle that cared. I made true friends for the first time, many of whom are still in my life today, and I learnt that while I was a weirdo, I wasn't always going to be judged or bullied as a result of that. I had a variety of relationships over the years and was lucky enough to meet Calvin, my spouse. While we had intended for our relationship to be little more than a fling, we both got more than we bargained for, and we're still together around 14 years later. The emotional toll of working in call centres became apparent, however. I was prone to becoming upset on calls from time to time. The work wasn't satisfying intellectually and required enormous emotional labour, which resulted in burning out every year or so, unable to leave the house for a week or more. I generally organised some sessions with a psychologist who'd give helpful advice, and then I'd stop going because I couldn't afford it. I was given a diagnosis of generalised anxiety disorder, which I never found particularly helpful. I mean, I could have told you I was anxious already. Fortunately for me, my work potential was spotted by a charismatic and quirky manager who offered me an analytics role in ensuring the smooth running of a call centre. From there, I was able to attain a forecasting role at a large telecommunications company, which gave me autonomy, a comfortable wage, and I gained glowing performance reviews. However, after continuing to wrestle with anxiety and frustration about working in an organisation that was focused on money rather than people, I decided to return to university. I enrolled as a Bachelor of Social Work student at Deakin. I dropped back to part-time at my forecasting job and started to study. While I thrived in social work studies, learning about society and justice and working to make life fair for people who were having hard times, I found myself periodically racked by anxiety. I excelled academically, but I'd also struggled to sit down and listen to each week's lecture, sometimes ignoring study for weeks at a time. I used all the technology I possibly could to organise my notes and readings, but also sometimes I just didn't read. Once I'd gotten that far behind, I'd slam a month's worth of reading into 2 nights and pull together an assignment. I blamed myself for being lazy, unmotivated, for repeating all the same mistakes that I'd already made when I was 20 years younger. But based on my results, I was doing well. During a bout of anxiety about my studies, I met with yet another psychologist who suggested that I might have auditory processing disorder, a condition where, although someone's hearing might be excellent, the part of their brain that processes sound, the auditory centre, doesn't go at the typical speed. So, for example, I can hear that Calvin hasn't turned off the oven from the gentle hum it makes, but often when I'm listening to someone speak, I might not hear them properly. But by the time I ask them to repeat what they've said, my brain's caught up. I actually then don't need them to repeat themselves anymore. So over time, I researched and learned more about auditory processing, which led me to believe that I wasn't just having issues with auditory processing, but I was autistic. Historically, people who are assigned female at birth tend to have lower rates of autism diagnosis. But new research is finding that autism isn't less prevalent in people assigned female at birth, but rather the way we have been assuming it presents is universal. As my nephew was diagnosed in primary school, my mother then quickly self-diagnosed, and I also came to recognise autistic traits in myself. However, before we do go on, I do want to give a bit of context about what are autistic traits and outlines how some of these apply to me. And also, to be very clear, every autistic person has a different experience of autism. Some of us have many of these features I'm about to talk about. Some of them only have some might have some some in some areas, but not in others. So we think differently. We might have strong interests in things that other people might not understand or care about. We might be great problem solvers and have great attention to detail, or we might take longer to think about things, take longer to start or finish a task, or to make decisions. Personally, I have strong interests in things that I get really excited about. Things like hiking, body positivity, social justice, playing tabletop role-playing games, to name a few. I read very quickly and can very quickly identify where a process might be broken and what the solution might be. However, I can get disrupted from a task easily and find it really hard to get back on track. We process our senses differently. We might be extra sensitive to things like bright lights and loud or constant noises. We might do repetitive motions such as rocking back and forth or wiggling our fingers. This is called stimming, and it helps us to process and regulate our emotions. So if I'm stressed out or really happy, I'll wiggle my fingers like this. But also if I'm stressed out or sad, you might see me rock from side to side like this. It's something I didn't really notice and often wouldn't do it when people were watching. But once I became aware of it, I just couldn't put it out of my mind. We communicate differently. Autistic people might have difficulty in speaking or not speaking at all using verbal words, but use sign language or aids such as an iPad to speak, as well as body language. Others of us might speak a lot or might not understand the spoken word particularly well at all. Personally, if I'm tired or stressed out, I can find it hard to find the right words and will miss half of the sentences. It's not that I'm not listening, I just can't process it in the moment. I'll use things like noise cancelling headphones to help me focus on sound better, as well as block out sound that I don't want to be hearing in the moment. We socialise differently. We can find it hard to understand social rules and expectations that aren't made explicit. We might speak more directly, might not use eye contact as much as as a non-autistic person, or not at all. We might also have difficulties in controlling body language or facial expressions, which can be confusing or confronting for non-autistic people. Some of us can find difficulty in reading others' emotions, or may be very sensitive to the emotions of others. Personally, I've found making and keeping friends difficult. I've always felt that I've done the right thing, so to speak, but I've struggled to make closer friendships. Well, as an adult, I blamed a lot of this on my fear of social situations learned from being bullied as a child. I now understand that a lot of this perceived awkwardness is due to social communication differences. We might need help with daily living. It can take a lot of energy to live in a society that's built for non-autistic people. Sometimes we're tired out from doing that. Sometimes we can't do everything that a non-autistic person can due to other features of being autistic. We might need help with activities of daily living, and we might be able to be perfectly able to cope one day, but unable to leave bed the next. Personally, I've found I'm highly capable in a lot of scenarios, but at a certain point, if I don't take the time to look after myself and put myself in a safe sensory environment, I'm going to burn out. Burnout for me has taken the form of overwhelming anxiety, self-destructive behaviour, miserable self-hatred and depression, and that takes time and effort and therapy to recover from. So, my partner was sceptical at my self-diagnosis, but over time he also grew to understand these traits. He was able to use the framework of autism to better understand me and recognise that if I spent too much time in a high sensory environment, such as a supermarket, my brain would just shut down. And it was more helpful just to give me the car keys so I could sit in the car in the quiet than try and argue with me and try and get me to keep doing what he wanted me to do. he came to recognise that what he had previously thought of as manipulative tantrums were in fact meltdowns, and our relationship grew stronger as a result. However, I wanted to know for certain. Unfortunately, getting access to testing for autism as an adult is often difficult and expensive, and getting funding is also difficult. We went privately in the end through scrimping and saving. After waiting the best part of a year, I went to a psychologist, spoke about my past, my childhood, got a bunch of psychological testing done, had my partner and other people in my family interviewed, and then I returned for the result. Not only was I autistic, I also had ADHD. This actually knocked me for 6. I couldn't believe the secondary diagnosis. It had never occurred to me that I had ADHD. I was a quiet kid, a bookworm. But I do fit the frame for ADHD, inattentive type. That is, I tend to lose track of time, I'll get hyper-focused on one activity, and but then find it hard to focus for long periods without necessarily having the physical hyperactivity that you often think of when you think about ADHD. My procrastination, inability to focus in online class, and difficulty without having a structured environment all began to make more sense. So I reached out and found a community online, learning about the experience of other people like me and the difficulties and struggles, as well as the joys and excitements that our lives entail. I began to recognise that I wasn't necessarily as introverted as I had assumed myself to be, but was actually having to work hard during interactions with non-autistic people to socialise, to understand and make myself understood. But that's not the same as being introverted. As a result of the diagnosis, I was referred to a psychiatrist, and with some changes to diet and medication, I found myself better able to focus at work and uni than I had in years. With a better understanding of who I am and what I need in order to do well in many areas, I'm doing better in many different ways. I'm different. I see the world in a completely different way to most people. And that's not just okay, it's great. And the same goes for every neurodiverse person, regardless of how much support that they need to thrive. It doesn't matter if they are nonverbal or if they are a successful scientist or business person. The struggles I have aren't due to the way my brain operates. They're struggles due to the fact that my brain operates differently to 98% of the population. It's a bit like living like an alien on Earth. I operate in ways that are normal and natural to me, but they can be confusing to others. But the reverse is also true. Neurotypical folks, that is, people who don't have things like autism, ADHD, etc., have all sorts of things that they do that I find strange and difficult. I struggle with eye contact when I'm talking to someone. So often when I'm listening to someone, I'll put my head down so I can hear them better. But to a neurotypical person, it might look that I'm not paying attention. The hyperfocus and special interests that I have, they bring me great joy. My love of the outdoors and hiking has brought me to escaping a comfort zone, and the friends I've made in this organisation has made me so happy. Knowing that stimming are ways for, such as the wiggling of the fingers, swaying back and forth, or bouncing my knee up and down, are ways for me to ground myself and help me function better, has really helped me cope within this neurotypical universe. The idea of neurodiversity is that natural differences in the way our brains work are not actually disorders. They're part of the overall diversity of humanity, just like skin colour. When we focus on the things that are difficult or hard for people who are different from the mythical normal, we miss out on the strengths that these differences bring and the work that all of us can do in making the world a more comfortable place for people with all kinds of brains. Now, I'm lucky. I was able to fund my own testing and therapy and aids such as medication, headphones, computer equipment, but I still haven't tried to register for the NDIS because the system's set up to see me as someone who's fundamentally broken, not someone who needs support from time to time. It's a time-consuming and often emotionally miserable process, and one which I currently don't have the time to face. It's not that I don't need the support, it's just that accessing it is so hard. Furthermore, as an adult neurodivergent person, I find a lot of services are very much geared towards children. While there has been a huge increase in the amount of people who are diagnosed as children and get the support they need from an early age, there are many like me who may not be aware they're neurodivergent, or that they just can't afford or know about the supports for diagnosis and assistance. So thank you to everyone for your attention today, and for Rochelle for giving me the opportunity to tell my story. I would love to answer any questions, and Rochelle will run you through the process for submitting those now.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Loey. Your story, I have learnt so much from your frank and open honesty tonight. And I think it's really important to hear these stories from someone we know, like, and trust. And to get, as you say, it's your experience of that. But for those of us who may be neurotypical, it's really enlightening to see what it is like for you, because we only really know our own experiences. And I think a lot of us think that everyone else is like us, and we can't make that assumption. So thank you. So for those of you following along at home during the live stream, thank you for all your very encouraging messages, which I will share, which Loey will see after this. Now's the time to ask some questions if you've got them. If you could just type them into the comments. A few of you have asked questions already, so I said to Loey that I would share those and read them out. So the first question, wow, some of these really resonate with me. Should I look into a diagnosis, or is it normal for neurotypical, is that the term, people to experience many of these things too, but to a lesser degree?
So yes, I mean, yeah, that's absolutely true. A lot of neurotypical people might experience some of these things. There are some, like, if you think that you are, like, if some of this really resonates with you, then it may absolutely be worth seeking at least some more information. I will be posting in the Melbourne Escaping Your Comfort Zone group a list of resources for people to sort of run through and see if there's some information there that can be helpful. And one of the things I will be putting there is a list of ways in which particularly autism tends to present in people assigned female at birth. So it's features that if you feel like that you're ticking a lot of those boxes, it might be worth it.
Yeah, really good point. And thanks for offering to share those resources as well. I think a lot of people who are either watching along tonight or watching it in the future, there will be quite a few people who have those same thoughts and just wonder. So those resources would be great.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I wanted to share my story today, was I know I'm not the only person who has had this experience, and I want other people to have that same knowledge of, oh, this is why I am the way I am.
Yeah, for sure. Not so much a question, but a statement from Gail, the lovely Gail. Gail says this begs the question, what is normal? We are all unique and just have to be more tolerant and understanding.
And that's absolutely true. I think when a lot of people say things like, "Oh, well, I'm not, I'm not anti-autistic people. Oh, autistic people, they're fine." Yeah, that's great. Until you see someone acting a little bit weirdly or wearing a weird clothing, or they might be weird, and then it's like you might point and laugh at them. They may be acting in ways that are autistic. So if we are understanding and caring about everyone and just go, hey, you do you, that is what ideally we would get towards.
Yeah, exactly. You do you. Okay. Another question from Justine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking Justine. Thank you for your questions. I'm liking question askers. Justine says, I'm also curious about Loey's experience with the gender identity and how that came about. If you're comfortable sharing that side of the story, as I think it's great to share more about diverse genders, as I think generally we can be a little ignorant and want to do the right thing.
And I will probably have that discussion at a later point. The time for that for me personally, emotionally, is not now. Thank you. Good. I appreciate you and your curiosity. It's good. And I don't want to make you feel like, oh no, you can't ask these questions. You absolutely can. But right now, as with all of us, we're all in a bit of an emotional bind. And right now, that's not something I feel comfortable in digging into. Not to say that I won't be able to do that in the future. Not to say I won't have a further discussion with Rochelle where we chew the fat over that. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Ratty has asked, is part of the issue with diagnosis in females or people who are female at birth because most of the research is based on males?
Yes. So, well, here's the thing, right? And this is my take on the research is there's a lot of ongoing debates, et cetera. But the way I see it is because, so if you have a look at historically, girls who were diagnosed were have high support needs. So they may not speak, they may have intellectual disability, there may be a variety of things that they just need additional support, and it is more obvious that they need that support. With people assigned female at birth, because we are generally culturally encoded to act, and we're told we can't act the way we want to act, we have to act in ways that are approved. Autistic girls and autistic children pick up on that just the same as neurotypical ones. And so then the frame has then become around, well, the people who are more likely to be disruptive are boys and people assigned as male. And so they're then given this, then the frame has all been, oh, well, this is about this presentation and not necessarily looking at the broader cultural context in which we live.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. We have a question from Lisa. Lisa says, bear with me, it's long. Lisa says, I've recently been diagnosed with a condition and I'm partially grateful and partially pissed off. I've been seeking help for 20 years and spent tens of thousands of dollars on psychology, medication, etc. So how did no one else pick this up? How did you find renewed energy to try another method of treatment and psychological focus?
So I guess where I was at when I did the when I actually sort of decided to get the official diagnosis was I had run into some quite ableist attitudes in my that basically put my ability to graduate from my degree at risk. And for me, that became a matter of survival. And I hear you, and it hurts because you should be listened to, you should be understood. And sometimes you've got to find strength you didn't know you had, and that isn't the way things should be.
Appreciate your empathy there, Loey. That sounds like a very tough gig. So big hugs to you, Lisa. I will let you, Loey, read the other message. There is a lot of messages of support here, and I'll let you read them yourself at a later point. I'm just checking for more questions. I will give you some of the feedback. Tracy W says, well done, Loey. Thanks for sharing and looking forward to you joining the social work profession. Your empathy, understanding, commitment to raising awareness and allowing people to ask questions. Oh.
It's very nice. Thank you, Tracy.
Let me just... Oh, that's right. So Karina had a two-pronged one, but it's a statement and a question. Karina says, I have a son that the school have sent me off twice to get diagnosed. Both times he has come up with anxiety, not autistic or ADHD, which was the diagnosis they were wanting / expecting.
Yeah.
Then Karina goes on to say, do you think sometimes it's a quick fix for schools to label?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's become kind of fashionable to do that. I think also there is a degree to which schools, some kids need additional support, but they may not necessarily have like the magic diagnosis that goes with it. So a lot of the time, sometimes schools will sort of push for this stuff to get that support, but it may not necessarily be about, so I hear you about you feel like you're being pushed into a diagnosis that doesn't need to be. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Ultimately, I do see there are dangers in schools being very quick to not necessarily identify like flag issues, but to push. A lot of the time parents know about this stuff before their kids do. Like parents are very perceptive on picking up their kids just a bit weird. And I mean, all kids are weird. All kids are genuinely weirdos.
We say weirdos in a very, like, can you explain like what you mean by weirdo? Because there was a comment earlier that said you're not a weirdo, you're just individual or something like that. I'm like, it's almost like the fat term. It's like weirdo is an embrace term for you, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So weirdness to me means pushing against what is obvious and what is quote unquote normal. On top of my wedding cake topper, actually said mutual weirdness forever. It is something that I understand that, and I mean, I look very normal right now, and the way I'm speaking, it's all very nice. But if you saw me earlier today when I was in floods of tears because I was on a phone call that I didn't like, and I was literally telling my husband to get out because I didn't want to talk to him, maybe you would see that a little bit differently. Weirdness is okay. It's okay to not be standard. It's okay to not be quote unquote normal. I embrace the weirdness because that is one of the things that makes me me.
Yeah. Yeah. And we love your weirdness. Like, can I just say that? And speaking of loving you, so Justine just made a comment. Justine says, I love how eloquently you're responding to questions. It's clear this topic of something is something you're very educated on, and I just love that you have this lens to share it. Yes.
Oh, that's very kind.
Well, I might wrap it up here, Loey. I just want to say again, thank you so much for your time, particularly today, as I know you've got a whole lot of stuff going on. We really, really appreciate the time you've taken, not just to do this today, but the time you've taken to put the whole thing together, which is hours and hours of work. So
it was hours of work I enjoyed.
And well, you're procrastinating on something else.
Hyper focus, not procrastinating. Totally procrastinating.
Totally procrastinating. There's no shame in procrastinating. Procrastinating is like, embrace it. Yes. But thank you so much. And thank you so much for opening up our series of storytelling. So it's been wonderful. Please go onto the live event on Facebook once it's closed down and fill your cup with all the amazing comments because they're incredible, deservedly so. And I will wrap this up here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you to everyone who watched on tonight. You are all amazing. Now have a great evening. Catch you.